Alright, what's up? We have the latest issue of Weekly Shonen Jump. I'm going to read some series from it, starting, as always, with My Hero Academia. This is chapter 234. They were on break last week, and we jump right back into the battle between the leader of the Meta Liberation Army and our protagonist of villains, Shigaraki Tomura. This one is called Sense Destruction. We start with this adorable little excerpt from a book called Quirks and Us. It's a little children's book to teach us about not judging people by their quirks. What a nice lesson. So lovely illustrated. With an Oni-looking like person, has some sort of devilish quirk, giving a little girl a bandage. And someone with a crocodile quirk, laughing and playing with their natural prey, the zebra, and the ram. How nice, how nice. It's a good lesson. I was raised that way, true. However, there's a clear link between personality and meta ability. You're someone who destroys anything he touches with all 5 fingers, so what do you think? And he's really just toying with Tomura right now. Half of his hand has already been obliterated. His wrists could be ground down into dust in just a second. Despite earlier questions, what burdens do you bear? What do you seek to build? All I see is just a hollow man who creates nothing. Just a man who indulges in destruction, right? That was Hannah's hand. Could we get more flashback before we had the painfully incomplete one that Tomura himself raged against? Its fracturedness and its confusion. These are your mothers, your grandmothers, your grandfathers, and your fathers. So these are the hands that he wears around him. I assume that it was something like that. I think before he's made reference to his father's hand or something. The human heart is an incredible thing. Left alone, it will heal itself of rage, grief, and all those negative emotions. But I always want you to keep them close to you so that those feelings never fade. Ooh. That's kind of brutal. And this, again, I think is a real inversion of a common heroic trope, where the hero has something sentimental that someone very close to them who died had left them. You know, oh, this watch, this scarf, whatever. Well, excuse me. And in times of heroic crisis, they would turn to these objects and be inspired by the legacy of those who have gone before them and think, I can't give up here, you know, and I can still stand, I can still fight, so on and so forth. This is basically the same principle, but, you know, with a much more negative feeling. You should be constantly filled with rage and grief, because you should always remember the horrors of your childhood. Hannah, got in trouble again. She's quiet. So this is his sister, I think? She was my big sister. That's what she was. Whenever I got weepy, she'd grab my hand and take me with her. Only Hannah could do this with just a few innocent childlike words. My head spinning round, and round, and round, and round. These memories are flooding back. So it's kind of interesting, too, that despite having this emotional residue, despite having the hands on him at all times, making him constantly kind of locked into this state of destructive, embittered, sad rage. The actual memories, the things that make these hands so significant, seem to be mostly lost to him, you know? That he can't, on demand, just recall things from his childhood. It's only in situations like this that they kind of flood back. In that case, you will never measure up to me. Incomprehensible frustration that sank deep, deep down into my heart. The missing memories slotting right into place. Feelings go hand in hand, hand in hand. Experience. Okay, so this one hand that's being kind of tortured right now is only left with 2 fingers. But very deliberately, he works those 2 fingers over to grab, to touch at least, the finger that's crushing him. So We've already seen somewhat of an evolution in his powers. It's not entirely clear how it was working. But before you know, he had to actually touch the very object he wanted to disintegrate with all 5 fingers of his hand. But before, we saw him mowing down waves of enemies, only touching kind of outside people, you know, touching them and causing a chain reaction of dusting. So that's definitely a big upgrade. But, you know, it still involved the full 5-finger touch. So now I'm wondering if we're getting an upgrade in another direction. He doesn't need all 5 fingers anymore. He can just... maybe? I don't know. Oh, yes, it's starting to work. His hand starts to crack apart. And this is one of the few times we've seen like this power kind of be semi-activated, you know? He flicks him off with his pinky immediately and goes flying. But then we see the finger that was attacked is cracked and bleeding. And for some reason I had never really thought about how if part of your body disintegrates, it's going to start just bleeding from that part, which is really, really terrifying. It's kind of neat that they almost kind of reserved aspects of this power that in retrospect were there all along, but they didn't really give the gruesome detail of it until later opportunities, just to kind of continue building this sort of creepiness with Tomura. Creepiness, but then also a little bit of compassion, a little bit of pity. It took 5 fingers to activate. We fed bad information. Oh, Tomura is freaking out. My head's splitting. He thinks of his mother now. Your eyes all ragged. Let's get you some drops. Only get itchier if you keep scratching. Raikals can spur meta abilities to evolve on the spot. And this isn't like a brand new concept. In fact, excuse me, at UA, they deliberately work with this information. We saw that training before, you know, expanding your quirks and stuff. They were hoping for this very phenomenon. It was finally be able to manipulate the temperature of ice because I suffered a burn. Okay. This young man is in the process of awakening. Littleton wind up with his life as a cat. I'm really, really impressed with this panel here. This is like going so far beyond the normal kind of confines of how the series looks. And that's something they've done with Tomura a few other times. Another panel that I think of as so iconic is when he runs into Deku at the mall. You must remember. The smile he gives him. It's like just kind of the freedom they've taken in depicting this, I think, is really intense. And just the breakdown of this chapter, too. Like, we had a 2-panel flashback of his mother, you know, that seemed to hint at something else going on. It'll only get itchier if you keep scratching. Was he crying? Was he crying and rubbing his eyes? We don't know, really. But it's almost like Chris Ware-esque. I'm going to go so far as to say that. These, like, very kind of minor flashbacks, these just, like, really brief, inexplained flashbacks of just sort of one sensory memory, you know? And then jumping between that and just these insane attacks, like Tomura just, his whole body distorting as he flings himself at the enemy. Amazing. That raw physicality, he should have managed to take down a hero or two in Kamino. His meta ability aside, he's also trained his body, but these moves, a transformation like that could only be achieved through brutal, life or death training over an extended period of time. Ooh. So, is this suggesting that we've actually been in the middle of the training arc this whole time? That Tomura's endless fights against Gigantomachia have actually upgraded his power significantly since he was last seen in public? It's certainly giving our Meta Liberation Army guy time to pause. I've also honed my stress ability, so I understand. I was wrong to judge you as beneath me. But you haven't vanished after taking so much damage. It tells me that you're no double. Well, that's true. Yeah. I guess he was always kind of keeping that possibility in mind. That after all this, it could just dissolve, and another one could just stroll out from around the corner. I'm like, all right, well. So this guy goes all nano machines on us. Gets super, super jacked, ripping off his shirt. No more games. Truly turning into a monster. This looks like it's a spread. Yeah. Stress output. Burden. Ooh. So on top of just becoming physically immense and having this sort of birthmark black whatever the wine stain birthmark thing that like Gorbachev has spread over his whole body. Now it seems like he's actually being able to unleash some sort of like energy type attacks. Like here he's swinging some mysterious black ball of something of stress, I guess. Just raw cortisol. All right, let's see. The gigantic hurricane blow. The city getting ripped to shreds. He has no concern whatsoever, of course, for his followers and stuff. Who, and in the midst of this again, more isolated, contextless flashbacks. Eating ohagi. Don't cry, Timko. Grandma cried too. Grandpa and Grandma always so kind. That's not it. I remembered everything. Back then, what I needed them to tell me was, I love you, I accept you, something like that. I don't know. He's like on the verge of some big kind of introspective breakthrough. You know, after getting his body whipped around like a rag doll in the aftermath of this attack. Is it going to be our standard shonen fare that he somehow kind of puts it all together, realizes what is worth fighting for, stands up again even stronger and takes down his foe? If so, what does that mean for his like long-term character arc? Is he no longer going to be nihilistic and destructive? If he's remembering perhaps the good of life? What I needed them to tell me was, the subordinate skeptic calls. Biancardi's headed right for you. They had a real monster lying in wait. They didn't play all of their cards. Of course, we know who's coming. It is, of course, Gigantomachia. Who is power level, I mean, both Redestro and Gigantomachia gave Tomura a pretty good whooping here. But I would put Gigantomachia still a tier above. Because, of course, in those previous fights, that was the whole villain alliance against him. And it still didn't really make any difference. And here it is. Raging up from the ground. Exploding. Gunning for Tomura, but not really opposed to just destroying absolutely everything in its path. It's Gigantomachia. Then that's the end of the chapter. We end on this really ominous shot of Shigereki's eyes. So we're like almost there. To me, the kind of final mystery is like, you know, what broke down. We kind of had hints that there was some major incident that left his entire family dead. That he was perhaps responsible for it, like his quirk. Somehow just went out of control. He started dusting all those people dear to him. But when he goes, it's like he had forgotten all of that, you know. He remembers now all these happy times with his family. The only thing that's missing is his father, right? He remembers his sister, his mother, and his grandparents. But what about his father? And when he goes, what I needed them to tell me was, what is it? Because I feel like, in the sort of happy family life we've seen here, they would have told him at many opportunities, oh, I love you, oh, I accept you, oh, I'm never going to abandon you. So what more did he feel like needed to be said? And again, like, what is this gonna leave him with afterwards? If he finally kind of comes to terms with his past, if he makes peace with the thing he had done by mistake, if he loses all of his baggage, which quite literally is flinging off of his body, with every attack we see hands flying off, no longer clinging to him, no longer reminding him of the past. The only one that's left is that one he wears on his head, the one that sometimes covers his face, which I think is his father's hand. So I think that's it, maybe. Something to do with the father. I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. This arc has gone in so many strange directions. And it feels like there's so much more that can still happen before we return back to UA and our favorite students, and we remember that this is actually supposed to be a story about heroes. But no, I'm really enjoying it. Okay, that's all for now. See you next week.